Hey guys, just a quick little video on getting these new style Shimano front derailleurs set up. This is the Ultegra 8000 and the Dura Ace 9100 series front derailleurs. So it's basically the 11 speed. This is the older version. You can tell by the longer arm there. And these derailleurs worked really well. Pretty much the downfall was adjustment wise, they were a little bit of a hassle compared to the older style. And then the angle of the cable pull here was, on some frames it has a tendency to be difficult to get to go through its initial throw there when it's all the way relaxed. So and this piece here, this just something that kind of came from when they started doing the Di2. It's just a little stabilization screw, and we'll get into a little bit more of this later, but both of these derailleurs have that feature there. But kind of some of the differences is it is a lot lower profile. It's got a little beauty cap here that kind of holds the cable once you're all done. But just kind of comparing them, it looks like the spacing on some of the pivots is slightly wider, and then a lot of the high-low limit adjustments are similar to how they are on a Di2 system, so they're kind of independent of cable tension, which doesn't really affect them. And so anyway, we'll kind of just jump right in here on what's all involved in installing and setting one of these up. This one here was just kind of how it came in this was a stock bike build up, and just kind of loosely sitting on the frame there. And after I've routed the cables, it's basically where the cable's going to cinch. Comes up through that little hole there. You can either go straight housing up to that hole, or just straight cable on your typical setup. So cable basically runs, there's a little kind of valley where it sits down in there, comes around the little anchor bolt there, and then pivots back around. This is the location of the high-low limit screws on these, so we'll get into adjusting those later. I'm assuming you've done some front derailleurs. Height-wise, it's the same, the 1 to 3 millimeters. That's the little stainless steel backing plate. If it's that little stabilization screw, is going to go right up to carbon fiber. You'll need that piece. And then that's the location of the little stabilization screw. So as I'm turning it, you can see it creeping in there towards the frame. Sometimes that thing's difficult to see, but really I see a lot of bikes that come in with none of that hooked up, and this is just kind of, as you're shifting the derailleur up, you can see how it, small ring to big ring, it really wants to push that derailleur in. This is just a bike I grabbed off the floor. I backed the screw off, and then with it set correctly, you can see how much stiffer that makes it there. So it basically enhances your shifting from small to big ring. What I'll do a lot of times, just to get the spot for the plate, I'll push that in just slightly, maybe score, just put a slight witness mark there on the clear, just so I can see, get a spot to, a definitive spot to stick the little stainless steel piece, just a little adhesive decal backing you pull off, stick it on, and then you're good to set it up. So I'm just, got my piece in, reattaching the derailleur here. Again, you might want to turn your cranks there, but it's just like a typical derailleur. You want to go 1 to 5 millimeters above the height of the chainring, and the teeth do vary, so you want to definitely spin that around and just go off the highest point of the teeth there. Locking that down, you want this to be in, Shimano's directions call for 1/2 degree to 1 degree in. I've found it kind of varies depending on how stiff that the braze-on adapter plate there is on the frame. So on this one I started to go with it and decided I wanted it in slightly more on this particular application. Some of the frames that have a carbon actual braze-on mount there, you may want to go slightly more because they have a little more flex to them. But from there you want to just push that thing in until your outer plate of the front derailleur is basically parallel to the large chainring. And so once you get that set up in your height, you're bolted on, good to go. Kind of the next step is just push that low limit screw in, or thread it in to the point of the outer plate is parallel or flush, I guess you could say, to the big chainring. This is kind of similar setup as the old one, when you're going to attach the cable. So that gets it in the correct position to kind of get an initial correct tension setting on your cable there. So you'll just route it through. I've got the little bolt pulled off here just so you can get a good look at where it's going to pass through. So reattach the bolt, and it's got a little washer with a nub. Your actual tension adjuster is that little screw that's sticking straight out, and so we'll get to that here in just a minute. But from here, you want to make sure also that your shifter is all the way in the furthest, lowest, all the slack is out of your shifter position. From there, just pull the wire through, just hand tight, pull it, and you're typically pretty good cable setting there. Here I'm just kind of backing out the low limit screw to kind of get it maybe ballparkish where it's going to be to start actually shifting. So from there you want to put it all the way in the big ring, shift it up, and then drop it down to that first trim click. And at that point you see these two little lines here, and then this is just going to set your cable tension to the correct setting. And so basically you'll want to, that's kind of like a little barrel adjuster, I guess you could say, but you want to just tighten that to those two lines line up straight. And you may recheck this after usually I like to stress the cables pretty well, but you may check this after a few good hard shifts. You may need to add a quarter turn or so. But once you get that set up, put your the chain in the big cog in the back, and then shift it all the way down. It's kind of just typical, you basically adjust your low limit screw till you have a little gap. A lot of bikes these days are coming with the chain catcher, and it's the same thing with the other 11 speed. You can have a little bit bigger gap in there because it doesn't, it's just that trim gap. It's the derailleur's not going to drop all the way there unless you hit that final trim, but it gives you a little extra room to not have that derailleur rub. And then same thing with the, put it up to the big ring at this point, small cog in the rear, and then you just want to adjust your high limit screw. And this is nice because it's easier to adjust your high and low limit screw because it's not really, the older ones, you could adjust them, but if your cable tension wasn't right, it didn't really affect anything. So these are kind of independent the way the Di2 is. And route your cable around, and you got that little plastic piece. The wire just slips right through there like so, and then you just kind of plug her into the center of the cinch bolt there, and that's basically it. You're good to go. I've done quite a few of these now, so that's basically just a few of the little tips there that I've gotten from it. I'll put a link in the description there that has Shimano's actual PDF written directions and such. But anyway, yeah, that's basically it. If you enjoyed the video, you might consider subscribing to my channel. I've got all kinds of tutorials and other bicycle related videos. So yeah, thanks for watching.